It's story time. The chill of autumn had descended upon the quaint town of Hollow Harvest, blanketing the streets in a tapestry of crimson and gold. As Halloween approached, a sense of anticipation filled the air, and the townsfolk eagerly prepared for the annual pumpkin festival. I had always loved the spirit of Halloween, the thrill of costumes and eerie decorations. So, when I heard about the legendary pumpkin patch just outside town, I couldn't resist the temptation to visit. It was rumored to be the most bountiful and extraordinary pumpkin patch in the entire region, a place where pumpkins of all shapes and sizes awaited their fate. On a crisp October afternoon, I set out for the pumpkin patch, my heart brimming with excitement. I had heard tales of its bewitching beauty, the pumpkins glowing like lanterns beneath the moonlight, the whispered secrets that seemed to rustle through the leaves, and the hauntingly sweet aroma that hung in the air. As I approached the patch, a sense of unease washed over me. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance among the rows of pumpkins. The air was still too still, and I couldn't help but feel that I was not alone. Nevertheless, I pressed on, determined to experience the magic of the pumpkin patch for myself. Rows upon rows of pumpkins stretched out before me, their vibrant orange hues contrasting sharply with the encroaching darkness. It was a sight to behold, but there was something unsettling about it. I reached down to pick up a pumpkin, its smooth surface cool to the touch. It was then that I heard a faint cry that sent a shiver down my spine. I looked around, but there was no one in sight. It must have been the wind, I thought, although it had an eerie, human-like quality. Ignoring my unease, I continued to explore the patch, selecting pumpkins of various sizes and shapes. Each time I bent down to pluck one from the vine, I heard the faint cry again, growing louder and more mournful. It was as if the pumpkins themselves were whispering secrets to one another, secrets I could not decipher. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the moon cast an eerie pallor over the patch. I couldn't deny that something was amiss, that an unexplainable presence seemed to linger among the pumpkins. But I pressed on, my determination overriding my fear. As I ventured deeper into the patch, the wailing grew more pronounced. It was a chorus of mournful cries that seemed to surround me, their haunting melody echoing in my ears. I couldn't help but feel that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were fixed upon me. And then I saw her, a figure cloaked in tattered rags, her long, matted hair obscuring her face. She sat among the pumpkins, her bony fingers clutching a pumpkin to her chest. Her eyes, when they met mine, were empty voids, devoid of life or emotion. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. She did not respond, but the wailing grew louder, emanating from her, as if she were the source of the mournful cries. I took a cautious step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with an otherworldly presence, and I knew that I had stumbled upon something beyond my comprehension. I reached out to touch her shoulder, my fingers brushing against her cold, clammy skin. She turned slowly to face me, her eyes locking onto mine. In that moment, I felt a surge of terror unlike anything I had ever known. Her lips parted, and a chilling voice issued forth, a voice that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the earth.
"You should not have come here."
She insisted, her words laced with a sorrowful lament. Before I could react, the ground beneath me gave way, and I tumbled into a dark, cavernous pit. I landed with a thud, the air knocked from my lungs. I struggled to my feet, my surroundings cloaked in shadow. The pit was a labyrinth of twisting, winding passages, and I had no idea which way to turn. The walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the air was thick with an eerie, suffocating stillness. As I ventured deeper into the labyrinth, I began to hear whispers, faint and indistinct at first, but growing louder and more insistent with each step. It was as if the very walls themselves were alive, their secrets pressing in on me from all sides. I stumbled upon a chamber, its walls adorned with grotesque carvings of pumpkins and twisted, contorted faces. In the center of the chamber, a colossal pumpkin sat atop a crude stone pedestal, its surface adorned with eerie symbols and runes. I felt an overwhelming compulsion to approach the pumpkin, to touch it, and uncover its secrets. But as I reached out, a wave of dizziness washed over me, and I fell to my knees. And then she appeared, the wraith-like figure from the pumpkin patch, her eyes hollow voids that seemed to pierce into my very soul.
You should not have come here.
She repeated, her voice echoing through the chamber. I tried to speak, to ask her who she was and what this place was, but my words were drowned out by the ceaseless whispering of the walls. I felt as if I were being consumed by the darkness, my very essence unraveling. In that moment, I knew that I was trapped, that I had ventured into a realm beyond my understanding. The pumpkin patch, with its bewitching beauty and mournful cries, was not what it seemed. It was a place of darkness and despair, a place where the spirits of the lost and forgotten lingered forever. As the crimson leaves crunched beneath my boots and the brisk October air filled my lungs, I couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. Halloween was just around the corner, and I had decided to visit the infamous Pumpkin Grove, a sprawling patch nestled on the outskirts of town. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows among the rows of pumpkins that stretched out before me. Their vibrant orange hues were juxtaposed against the deepening twilight, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. It was as if the pumpkins were alive, their crooked smiles and misshapen faces beckoning me deeper into their realm. I meandered through the rows, inspecting each pumpkin as I went. Some were plump and perfect, while others were gnarled and twisted, their imperfections adding to their charm. It was clear that the patch had been meticulously cared for, and I marveled at the dedication of its unknown caretaker. As I continued my exploration, a sense of unease began to creep over me. The once inviting pumpkins now seemed to leer at me, their grinning faces taking on a malevolent quality. I brushed aside my apprehension, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. After all, it was Halloween season, a time for thrills and chills. With a determined stride, I ventured deeper into the heart of the patch. The moon cast an eerie glow over the pumpkins, their silhouettes dancing in the dim light. It was then that I heard a faint haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath me. I paused, my heart pounding in my chest, as the music grew louder, accompanied by the sound of eerie laughter. It was a sinister, tinkling melody that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced around, searching for the source of the haunting tune, but there was no one in sight. As I cautiously advanced, the music led me to a small clearing in the center of the patch. There, beneath a gnarled and twisted tree, I saw him a clown. His colorful, tattered costume was a grotesque parody of mirth, his face obscured by a mask of garish makeup. In his gloved hand, he held a demented jack-in-the-box, its tune still playing. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, as the clown slowly turned to face me. His painted smile seemed to stretch impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged, yellowed teeth. His eyes, hidden behind dark, soulless orbs, bore into mine with a malevolent intensity.
Hello there. Care to play a game?
He purred in a voice that sent chills down my spine. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, as I realized that this was no ordinary encounter. The clown's intentions were anything but benign, and a growing sense of dread washed over me. Before I could react, the clown sprung to life, his movements jerky and unnatural. With a maniacal laugh, he lunged toward me, the jack-in-the-box in his hand springing open to reveal a grotesque, grinning skull. Panic coursed through my veins, and I turned and ran. The pumpkin patch seemed to stretch on endlessly, its rows of grinning pumpkins a surreal and nightmarish landscape. I could hear the clown's maniacal laughter echoing behind me, growing closer with each passing second. I knew that I had to find a way out, or else I would become another victim of this macabre game. I sprinted through the rows of pumpkins, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My heart pounded in my chest as I desperately searched for an escape route. The moon overhead seemed to mock me, its pale light offering no guidance in my frantic flight. The clown's laughter grew louder, and I could feel his presence closing in on me. I had to think fast to find a way to elude him. That's when I spotted a narrow gap in the rows of pumpkins, leading to what appeared to be a dense thicket of trees beyond. With every ounce of strength left in me, I dashed toward the opening, the thorns and branches tearing at my clothes and skin. I could hear the clown's maniacal laughter and heavy footsteps behind me, his relentless pursuit never wavering. As I burst through the thicket and into the woods beyond, I dared not look back. My heart pounded in my ears, and my lungs burned with exhaustion. I kept running, guided only by the light of the moon, until I could run no more. Finally, I collapsed onto the forest floor, gasping for breath. The night was silent now, the haunting melody and sinister laughter fading into the distance. The clown was gone, his pursuit abandoned. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, the horrors of that night replaying in my mind. I had narrowly escaped a fate that was too terrible to imagine, and I knew that I would never forget the malevolent clown in the pumpkin patch. Eventually, I mustered the strength to rise to my feet and make my way back to town. The moon hung low in the sky, casting its pale light over the pumpkin patch, which now seemed eerily tranquil. The clown was nowhere to be seen, as if he had never existed. I couldn't shake the feeling that the patch held secrets far darker than I could comprehend, and I vowed never to return. Halloween was meant to be a time of celebration and revelry, but I had learned the hard way that not all games were meant to be played. As I walked away from the pumpkin patch, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The sun was just beginning to kiss the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the rolling fields of my farm. As I stirred awake, my mind was filled with thoughts of the bountiful pumpkin harvest that awaited me. Autumn was my favorite season, and my pumpkin patch was my pride and joy. I threw on my boots and jacket, eager to greet the day and tend to my beloved pumpkins. With each step, the dew-kissed grass crunched beneath my feet, a comforting sound that signaled the changing of the seasons. But as I approached the pumpkin field, a sight that filled me with shock and disbelief unfolded before my eyes. Every single one of my pumpkins had been smashed to pieces. I couldn't believe my eyes. My pumpkins, the result of months of labor and care, lay in ruins, their vibrant orange flesh scattered across the field like a gruesome tapestry. The devastation was absolute, as if a storm of fury had descended upon my farm. Anger and confusion surged through me, and I scanned the area for any sign of the culprit. My heart sank as I noticed the footprints, the unmistakable imprint of boots stained with pumpkin pulp, leading away from the carnage. Who would do such a thing? I thought, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it a prank gone horribly wrong? Or did someone bear a grudge against me and my farm? With a heavy heart, I set to work, carefully salvaging what pumpkins I could and cleaning up the wreckage. The task was painstaking, and with every pumpkin I gathered, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss. As the day wore on, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of unease. It wasn't just about the pumpkins. It was the violation of my sanctuary, my cherished patch. Whoever had done this had invaded not only my farm, but my very sense of security. That evening, I contacted the local authorities and filed a report, hoping they might be able to uncover any clues or leads. They promised to look into it, but cautioned that without evidence, it would be difficult to identify the culprit. As the days passed, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of frustration and helplessness. The pumpkin patch remained a somber reminder of the destruction, and the feeling of vulnerability weighed heavily on me. It was clear that whoever had done this had intended to send a message, but to what end, I couldn't fathom. One evening, as I sat on my porch, brooding over the loss of my pumpkins, a neighbor approached me. It was Old Man Jenkins, a lifelong resident of the town and a fellow farmer. "I heard about what happened to your pumpkins, son," he said, his voice filled with sympathy. I nodded, unable to find the words to express my frustration and sorrow. "I've seen my fair share of misfortune in my time," he continued, "and sometimes it's personal. Folks around here can hold grudges for years, and it's not always easy to understand why." I regarded him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "You think someone had it out for me?" I asked. Old Man Jenkins nodded solemnly. "Could be. You've had a good run with that patch of yours, and maybe jealousy got the better of someone. But remember this, son, revenge is a bitter fruit, and it rarely satisfies." His words struck a chord with me. Perhaps the destruction of my pumpkins was indeed an act of revenge, but what had I done to warrant such anger? I had always been fair and honest in my dealings with others. Days turned into weeks, and despite the passage of time, the identity of the pumpkin vandal remained a mystery. The town had moved on, preoccupied with their own lives and concerns. But I couldn't let go of the burning need to uncover the truth. Late one evening, as I patrolled the pumpkin field with a flashlight, a glimmer of something caught my eye. It was a scrap of paper, crumpled and partially buried in the earth. I bent down to retrieve it, my heart racing as I unfolded the tattered note. Written in a hasty scrawl were the words, "You reap what you sow." My pulse quickened as I read the ominous message. It was clear that this was no random act of vandalism. It was a calculated act of revenge. But who could bear such a deep-seated grudge against me? As I pondered the message, a name floated to the surface of my memory: Thomas McAllister, a rival farmer who had once been a friend. We had parted ways years ago over a dispute about land boundaries, and our relationship had soured ever since. Could it be Thomas? I wondered, my mind racing with the possibilities. It seemed far-fetched, but the note hinted at a motive rooted in bitterness. Determined to uncover the truth, I paid a visit to Thomas's farm the following day. He greeted me with a gruff nod, and I couldn't help but notice the patch of fresh soil near his barn. "Planting something new?" I inquired, unable to contain my curiosity. Thomas regarded me with a steely gaze. "A fresh start, you might say," he replied cryptically. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, and as I glanced around his farm, I noticed several pumpkins growing in the distance. They were remarkably similar to the ones I had lost, and my suspicions deepened. As I left Thomas's farm, I knew that I had to uncover the truth, to confront him with the evidence, and demand an explanation. It was clear that he held a grudge, but to what extent would he go to exact revenge? That night, I revisited the pumpkin field, haunted by the memories of its destruction. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the pumpkins that had survived the ordeal. It was a hauntingly beautiful sight, a testament to resilience in the face of adversity. But my focus remained on the scrap of paper and the cryptic message it bore. I needed answers, and I was willing to confront Thomas to get them. Revenge was a bitter fruit, as Old Man Jenkins had said, but sometimes it was the only way to uncover the truth. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that hung in the air. I knew that I was on the cusp of a revelation, one that would reveal the depths of betrayal and revenge that could lurk beneath the surface of even the most tranquil of landscapes.
Until next time, take care.